physics. And I'm starting to have bad thoughts, why am I doing this analog mission at all? It's just a simple example of a human factor. Now imagine we're flying for 3 years, shoved in a can, with 5 people we end up loving or hating, one of the two. So anyhow, human factor is the biggest risk factor in space exploration, especially if we're talking about the long duration space flight, which is very hard to predict our human behavior in such a long period of times. Are we gonna run into emergencies? What do you guys think about 900 days? Are we gonna run into emergencies? You kind of see the list of emergencies, what can happen, cardiovascular problems, neurological problems, dental emergencies, you name it, you got it. NASA report estimated at least one serious medical emergency on a flight to Mars, and we're talking about the crew of 5 to 6 people. Now let's think about the commercial sector of space flight for a second. All right, so human factor, what that is, what contributes to that. On the right side of the slide, you see what can contribute to that. Physical and environment factor. Microgravity, radiation, we're all aware of that. The second one is habitability. And the space that you're going to be designated to go to Mars is really, really small. If you get up and stretch your arms and extend a little bit more, that's what you get for the space traveling to Mars, about 25 cubic meters, I'm sorry. The next factor is interpersonal relationship. What if you don't get along with your peers? And psychological, of course. A lot of the problems that contribute to psychological problems is boredom, workload is really, really high. Even if you go to analog missions, you'll see that you have to fill in the log and your schedule is very, very tied to it every day. Because you have to perform a lot of research, you have to collect a lot of data. That being said, I wanted to mention that on long duration flight, even though right now we expect about 2% of behavioral issues, I think that number will grow dramatically. And when we go to analog, when we research and read the reports from the analog environments that's taken from the submarines and Antarctic research, we see that they're reporting about 5% of the behavioral issues. I'm talking big psychiatry, like psychotic episodes, schizophrenia, bipolar disorders, etc. All right, so what we shall do about that? On the moon, we're kind of close. We have live chats with relatives or friends. No problem. We go to Mars. We run into the Earth out of view phenomena. We don't see Earth. Really bad for us. How do we? What countermeasures do we use to mitigate those psychological risks that we discussed? We employed the exponential technologies. What I mean by that is it can be 3D printing. It can be synthetic biology, it can be artificial intelligence, advanced robotics, drones, etc. So in those slides you see a couple of examples of what we have implemented in our missions. The first one is the body mapping art therapy using VR Google Tilt Brush. It's basically a VR technology that allows astronauts to build their own avatar and paint it. And we use it as a snapshot to see how astronaut feels, what emotional status he or she is in. It basically captures the snapshot of the body and mind status at this particular time. But we also can collect those images and create a pattern to observe a pattern and deduct some conclusions out of it. The second example that we're implementing using VR technologies is Burning Mars Love VR project. All it is a conflict resolution simulation training for the astronauts in austere environments, austere isolated environments. And what that is, you go through a scenario that allows you to see how this conflict can be resolved. So you have multiple scenarios, and this is a wonderful technology because you can use it for the medical emergencies as well. You can use VR to train astronauts pre-simulation, in simulation, and post-sim to adapt back on their earthly lives. So those are just a few examples of the technologies that we use. There are many others, like we have a green hub where we have grown plants we're thinking about implementing some tools from the synthetic biology and also CRISPR technology, CRISPR kits. We had implemented a meditation and music therapy with the sonic frequencies in our missions. Why is that all important? Because it keeps you sane. If you basically feel you feel the workload, enormous workload even during the analog missions. So you have to implement some sort of a tools to keep the balance between work and rest, and also you use it as the as an identifier of certain risks. For example, in the body mapping, if you see something falls out of the pattern, you can see that might be an issue there, and then you do an interview and a conversation with the person, with the crew member, and this is where the astropsychiatry discipline is emerging right now. So there are a lot of cool progressive technologies, exponential technologies we're implementing. That being said, those tools are used by us, by humans. So I think that's an important factor. That's an important thing to mention and to remember, because unless this full merge happens, we're still dealing with us. We're human beings, and it still will remain the same. We're not sending robots on Mars or other planets. We're sending us, human beings.
Thanks, Mary. So before I move to Helena and her slide and her talk, when you look at these images, can someone tell me what is the common denominator in these images? Which actually is an advantage for crews in isolation confinement? Can somebody take a stab? What is common thread between all those images?
Headset.
Sorry? Headset? No. Something more human. No?
What's the first letter?
So, if you really look at it from a human side, take away the technology, which actually the technology enables the crews to do, is to be social. They are always together, working together, enjoying the time together, learning together. That is the key. Using the technology to be able to increase crew cohesion and bonding, and to be social. So yes, you can use the technology to have your own isolation in that virtual experience, but at the same time, in these analog missions, it's vitally important that you maintain crew cohesion and increase bonding. And these are the social activities that are not the technical, per se, the engineering or this, that allows the crew to build that bond and that gel. That's so important. So with that said, let's now move on to Helena, and she's going to give you her topic that she's going to discuss.
Yeah, and I think building off of that social aspect, that's so important. Our internal team, we actually have met over the course of the past